Hey guys, last time we touched on a few of the basics of the Elder Scrolls Online, and this episode we're going to be talking to Paul Sage, and I'll be talking also about my experience playing it at the studio. Now, we weren't allowed to film the screens when we did play, so all I've got for you is basically a recap of my experience during those 4 hours. And I started in a desert region called Stros Mackay after I picked my class, and there were a healthy array of sliders and a fair amount of customization at character creation. And one of the most important things to me in an MMO is how unique I can look, and I was reasonably pleased with what I could do. Questing was a lot of fun. NPCs don't have awkward immersion-breaking markers over their head, like giant question marks, etc. Instead, they have an easily visible glow, so you can see who it is you can talk to, and when you talk to an NPC, you move into a Skyrim-style cutscene point of view. There you're given a number of dialogue options which branch out in a kind of tree-style format. So instead of having a fixed wall of text, everything is voice acted, and you're able to make decisions on how to complete objectives through those menus. One example is, in the first area I played, I witnessed one NPC poisoning another in an attempted assassination. Now, I was then given the choice to either find and give them an antidote or to let them die. Now, I won't tell you which one I picked, but it was a nice touch, and choices like that hit me quest after quest, and while the consequences weren't major, it was a nice move away from the linear story I'm used to in MMOs. The combat feels very fluid, very Elder Scrollsy. It's still early beta, but the game felt solid, animations seemed fluid, and my character looked and felt like it belonged on the world it was placed on. Combat rolling to evade fireballs via double tap, and blocking powerful swings was a fun experience in itself. It's still only in beta, and while much could change, what I have seen from the Elder Scrolls Online looks promising. They haven't announced how you'll pay for it, subscription, or free to play, or some new business model, and I couldn't sink my teeth into PvP, but we were shown a 30 vs 30 Keep Siege live, and it looks like PvP is one of the areas the game will really shine. Could you tell me a bit more about your position at ZeniMax?
Sure. I'm the creative director for Elder Scrolls Online, which is being developed by ZeniMax Online Studios.
Cool. And we got a hands-on test of the game earlier. Managed to play 4 hours, and it was really cool stuff. What is the favourite part of the game that you've kind of had attention with so far?
It's hard to pick a favorite, but if I had to, I'd say that I think our combat system and the way we've kind of removed a lot of the interface elements from the world, so you're really engaged by the monsters that you fight, and you react to them, and not just the interface elements on your screen. So I think the combat system is something I really enjoy, and just off the top of my head, that's one thing that stands out.
Nice. Yeah, I noticed that was one of the first things I did kind of see when we started playing, that you aren't bombarded with information's text everywhere. You're kind of left to that level of immersion that you can enjoy, much like Skyrim and the other Elder Scrolls games. One question I want to ask is that you've mentioned that crafting lets you get the highest end items, but often we've seen that the materials to get those items come from various areas where you might not want to go to if you just want to craft. Are there any crafting materials that are found in, say, AVA, Alliance versus Alliance, or Heroic Dungeons, or can you craft the best weapons without going to those places?
So you'll probably have to trade if you don't want to go to those places, right? But you can absolutely find things in Cyrodiil, which is where our Alliance War takes place, or even in the higher level areas. But again, if you just want to be a straight crafter and you want to trade other players for those raw materials, you can absolutely do that. But crafters also have the ability to take the special item you found, say in a dungeon, right? And they get to improve that. So that's kind of the way that we assure that people want to have their crafters helping them out.
Nice. We also covered that once you finish the game, or rather once you finish the faction quests for your faction, you're then allowed to take your character to the other 2 zones. Now, crafting materials available in the first zone, I assume there are nodes, or kind of various places where you collect these crafting materials. Once you get to the highest tier, does that mean that once you reach the second area, all of the nodes you find are going to be of the highest tier?
So I think all of the nodes that you're going to find, all of those crafting nodes are going to be useful at all tiers in the crafting system, and not just certain things only apply to certain high-end gear. So I think that's, if you're looking for, once you're post 50, which are in these separate alliances. So if you decide that, you start out in Daggerfall Covenant, you want to play All-Merry Dominion, are you going to have different resources once you go into that different alliance? And the answer is you'll probably see some different resources, but a lot of the resources you already seen are still going to be useful for you.
Cool. And we see that there are 3 factions in the game. We haven't seen that for a while, and often when there are 3 factions, one tends to be the underdog, and nobody wants to play it because they'll get steamrolled in PvP. What incentives are you going to give to the underdog faction, and what are your thoughts on 3 factions in general?
So I think that what you'll actually see, and hopefully, is that part of this solution is in our mega server technology, right? So the fact is that you're not assigned just a server, and so a lot of the underdog stuff came from being assigned to a server, and you had lower populations on certain things. And we dynamically assign people to what we call campaigns. And campaigns are the Cyrodiil, they're the persistent Cyrodiil that exists in the world. And so if there's ever an underdog, well, we're probably going to assign more people to that underdog. And if they want to switch, they can switch, but that's kind of the way we're going to auto balance and auto correct that.
The feel of the world is very Elder Scrolls. It's clear from the second that you get in there that this is an Elder Scrolls game, and the architecture, armor, and general aesthetic is definitely Elder Scrolls. What kind of armor are you going to get specific to the races? As a kind of elf, can I get orc armor? As a Breton, can I get dark elf armor? What are the kind of options down the line of crafting for aesthetic?
So when you start off, you pick your race, and you'll already start off with what we call racial style. So if I start off and I decided I want to play an orc, I'd have my orc racial style. If somebody else started off as an Altmer, they'd have their Altmer racial style. And that is every item that I decide I want to make that's that style, it'll look in the style of the orc style or the Altmer style or even the Breton style. And then as I'm going on as a crafter, I can learn new racial styles. I don't just have to stick to what my race is, right? And so exploring the world will help me learn new racial styles, and then I'll be able to make it. So really good crafters will be able to make almost every racial style that we have in the game.
That sounds awesome. So one of the key things about the Elder Scrolls is that you can go first person. When you're playing Oblivion and when you're playing Skyrim, you're very much in control of your character and you see through your own eyes. Is first person going to be in your game?
Absolutely. So we've already talked about first person, but I think now is when we're really talking about you will get to have your hands, you will get to see your hands in first person mode, you'll get to see the spells you cast up close, and it's the FOV might change a little bit when you're in first person, but that's because we just want to make sure that it's definitely that experience that you want. You get to see all the level of detail of the world when you're in first person. I think it's fun. It's probably the way I'm going to play, at least when I'm exploring the world. And then of course PvP I'll probably pull out a little bit and play third person.
Nice. You mentioned mega servers before. Now, one of the big kind of problems you have when you play an MMO these days is that there are several servers and you have to pick one to play with your friends. Could you tell us a bit more about this one mega server structure that you have in place?
Sure. So the mega server is there, so you don't have to decide, what server are you on, right? And we want to make sure that we will fragment the population a little bit with alliances, but not by server. And so if you pick, I want to, just go in and play, and my friend's also playing and I want to go play with him, you can absolutely do that. So we're going to have lots of mechanisms in there to just get into the game and just join your friend wherever they are, and you can go play with your buddy. So that having a robust looking for group system will be really important for us as well. But the nice thing about mega server that I think it really allows us to do is kind of remove those barriers, right, that you have when you go in and you just say like, I wish I could play with you, but I can't, and now I'm level 1 and you're level 25, right? And instead it's like, hey man, I just want to join you real quick. So what it is if say you were in Daggerfall and I was in Daggerfall, but somehow we were on different Daggerfalls, which kind of instance out, I just say, hey, I want to go join my friend and play with them, and poof, we'd let you join up. Now the server's going to be smart. It's going to try to place you with your friends. It's going to try to place you with your guildmates, but that's great. If for some reason it didn't get to it, you can just say, hey, this is who I want to play with and this is where I want to be, and we'll let you do that.
Sounds cool. And the PvP in this game is very much alliance versus alliance, which is 3 alliances all duking it out in the center of the map, Cyrodiil. What other kind of PvP options will there be, or what do you plan to include?
So I think when you look at Cyrodiil, right, there's the nice thing about having this kind of persistent campaign that stays around for a while is that I can go in as a solo player. And if I want to sneak around and I just want to basically let's say kill other players that are roaming around, or if I'm on a different quest and I just kind of want to act as bait to kind of bait somebody in and then lure them in and attack them back, that's there to do. If you want to go in as a small group, you want to take things like farms. You can do that. There's quests that'll be available in Cyrodiil, and as well, of course, there's the big thing. So Cyrodiil really offers so many different play styles, just by virtue of what it is, that we think that's going to be a really good start for how we want our PvP to work.
Cool. One of my favorite things about playing Skyrim was being able to sneak. I played a kind of stealthy archer who went around in light armor, murdering people and just being a general villain. And I noticed that sneak is still in the game. You have that kind of iconic eye in the center of the screen. Can you tell us how that will work in PvP?
Sure. So sneaking is great, and the more you spend on, let's say, medium armor, which is kind of the armor that's built more, it's got passive abilities that go along with that skill line. And let's say you decided I wanted to be in all medium armor, I wanted to have all of my sneak fully up, then yeah, you'll be pretty hard to detect by players, and so you will basically almost be invisible to them. Now that said, there will be counters to that, like people will be able to reveal those people who are sneaking around, and every time you sneak, you're using stamina. So you can't just sneak around, the whole world. You have to be very careful and judicious about when you use it. But if you're resting, if you're hidden, then your stamina will grow back. So it's a pretty interesting game. And again, if you go into any battle where your stamina is drained like that and you're hidden, you're kind of at a disadvantage, because people are going to be able to take advantage more of the stamina that they've reserved by not sneaking around. So it's always a choice.
Now, when you level up, you're presented with your 3 base stats: stamina, magicka, and health. And those are the 3 kind of core resources for gameplay. Have you thought about any way you can augment those through skills?
Sure. So there's definitely, when we say like heavy armor, if that's one of the skill lines you take, then if you start to pump up the passives, that'll actually augment your health. So there are things that allow you to kind of say like, okay, I want to be able to absorb damage, and so that's there. For light armor, for instance, there's a passive there that says I want to increase my magicka, and as I said with the medium armor, that'll help you increase your stamina as well as your sneak. So those are the things I think, yeah, definitely we want to make sure that those core, what we call attributes, can be enhanced by certain passives, and even certain things that you're able to wear in the game.
One of the core features about Skyrim and Oblivion is that it's very sandboxy. You're presented with a world, and you can then choose your own way to get to whatever you want to get to. You can make your own goals and then choose your own way to get there. And you've mentioned that crafting is a way to get the best items in the game. Can you get levels from crafting? And is it gated in any way? Can you craft certain things at certain levels, and are there kind of, well, bars?
So while it is an open world, our professions are kind of a different progression system, and they exist on their own. And one of the reasons for that is we wanted to make crafters feel special if they decide to specialize. So even though it's not exactly point based, just for let's say the sake of an example, if I said there were 1,000 points that you could distribute among your skills, and that's not exactly accurate, but if there were, and you decided that, okay, I want to take all 5 skills up to roughly 100, or I said, oh, but I want to get a little bit more in this one skill, I could do that. But if we said that the max of one skill was 800 points, then you'd realize, oh, I couldn't have all of these other skills kind of near the middle or even up close to the max. So it's really a system of what do I want to specialize in, but if I want to be a jack of all trades, I can be.
One of the things that you'll find in the world as well are anchors, kind of these giant chains plunged down from the plane of Cold Harbor, I think it is. Can you tell us a bit more about those random encounters in the world?
Sure. So the dark anchors are where Molag Bal is kind of pulling Tamriel into Cold Harbor, because it's kind of his machinations to own what is Nirn and get them into his realm of influence, because he can't go into the moon just based off some deal that they've made in the past. So when the player sees this, they'll see these big anchors come down into the world, and it's a little bit reminiscent of the Oblivion gates that players may have experienced in Oblivion. And then they'll see there's Daedra that are kind of having a staging ground for entrance and taking over these other towns, and they're protecting these anchors. And so the players can come in, they can kill the Daedra, which is actually part of the Fighters Guild. And then once they kill the Daedra, they gain rank in the Fighters Guild, but they can also do something to the Dark Anchor that'll make the Dark Anchor disappear, and basically all of the players that were participating in that event of the Dark Anchor will all get credit for that.
One of the ways you can reach endgame and then expand your character further is to kind of find these extra skill trees and level them up. How many are you kind of at the moment, and what kind of skill trees are you thinking of adding, and what are you going to attach them to?
So how many? I don't know that I've done a count recently, but for instance, we have Fighters Guild and we have Mages Guild. That'll happen as you go into the world, so you won't start with them. But when you join those guilds, then you'll be able to get those skill trees. There will be things like alliance skills. We already talked about the racial that you'll start off with, and then we have what we call world skills. And the world skills are more dynamic. You don't know what's going to get you that particular skill line, but I think we hinted at today that that's you'll see vampire in there, and perhaps even werewolf in that. And so those will be full skill lines that the players will have access to.
I know Terps is keen to see werewolf as a skill tree because he's just nuts about wolves. Moving back to the open world features of the game, are there any incentives for players to kind of go off the beaten track and explore the darker reaches of the areas you present them with?
Absolutely. Our hope is that players won't just follow the NPCs who have quests for them. Our hope is that players will just say, we're done with that. We're going to go out, we're going to explore in the world. And, there are things like we have what we call, are currently calling Sky Shards. And Sky Shards, basically, if I find 3 of them, I get a skill point, and we're not showing the players where those are. Those are through exploration. There's books all over the game that you're collecting for the Mages Guild, but some of the books will actually increase your skills. Should be very familiar to Elder Scrolls players. And then there's way shrines that you find in the world, and there's just a ton of other things. There's treasure chests that you can lockpick. All over the world, we've placed lots of things for the players to find. And my hope is that sometimes they just ignore us. They go do what they want to do. They go out into the world, and then, who knows? There's going to be quests out there that they're going to find, and they're not going to have had to follow some path to get those quests. Those quests will just be there naturally as they explore the world, and that's one of the things that I think that I'm really happy seeing is those people who do go off the beaten path, and you watch them and you watch their eyes light up like, oh, I didn't have to do that at all. Okay, and now I'm happy, and I'm just exploring the world, and I think that's great.
So what is the story behind the Elder Scrolls Online? We saw in Oblivion that we were fighting Mehrunes Dagon, and in Skyrim we had the whole dragon shout and the background of the Imperial fight versus the Nords. Can you tell us the main story and the idea of why you're in the Elder Scrolls Online?
Sure. So the main story is that the player has had their soul stolen by Molag Bal, who's a Daedric prince. And of course, kind of nice to get your soul back. So as the player goes through, we have what we call the main story, and that's kind of instanced just to the player. So they make decisions that are key just to them about how they want to proceed in the main story and how they want to get their soul back. As well as that starts to tie into the greater story of the whole world. So it's interesting you mentioned Skyrim, because we start to find out the plot of Molag Bal to tear Tamriel into Cold Harbor. And so at the same time that you're going to be recovering your soul, you're actually going to be saving all of Tamriel, and in fact all of Nirn, which is the world, from Molag Bal. So it all kind of starts to tie in together near the I won't say end, but certainly near the end of the main story experience.
You mentioned end there, and so will players see an end to the story, and what are your thoughts on expansions and future content for the game?
So the players will resolve the conflict where they can get their soul back, and they'll resolve the conflict with Molag Bal, but that is certainly in no way the end of the story. In fact, they'll probably find at that time that there's more machinations behind that, and that's when we start talking about our commitment to, expansion content, or just ongoing content for the player. Which is going to be huge and key for us, is to make sure that story is like, oh, I can't wait, because I need to find out what happens next.
One of the key things to players in the MMOs is their character looks individual and is almost a reflection of their personality in some ways. What kind of options do players have in terms of cosmetics and perhaps vanity items, or perhaps even mounts in the game?
So one of the things that's really fun, hopefully today when you played, you even got to experience a little bit of it. We have disguises around the world, right? And if you notice, you moved a disguise over into your costume slot on your character. So we actually have costumes that'll be in the game that you'll find little costumes throughout the world that your player will be able to equip and, really feel unique. But those disguises you find that are part of gameplay, you can keep those, and so you can put those in your bank. And so anytime you're in town and you just want to look like one of the I think the sea dogs that you saw today, you can just put that disguise on and you can see, oh, okay, cool, I'm this completely different look to me. And so I think that's a lot of fun. I think it's important for players to stand out in that way. But again, crafting is going to help. Crafting will, like I said, with the racial styles, will really help you look unique and stand out in the world.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for your time. It's been great to kind of hear from you in the game, and I for one can't wait to get playing it and get into the Alliance versus Alliance action that you've kind of done a great job on, I think, so far. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add to the guys watching?
Hopefully people have signed up for our beta, and if they have, then I can't wait to see them in game.
So beta is coming up super soon, so sign up for that if you're interested in checking out the game firsthand. And I hope you've enjoyed these quick previews into the world of The Elder Scrolls Online, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.